itself.
At the first camp, we gave each woman 2 sacks with each weighing 25 kilograms or 55 pounds and a gallon of cooking oil. This would be all their families might eat for an entire week, and they were grateful to have been selected by our guides at SCC to receive it. The guides and I made the decision of who would receive the food as we had, based on the greatest need. The absurdity of this hit me like a bat, as each house I looked at looked equally empty, and each beautiful face reminded me of what we had in common. We were all human beings, and all of us needed the basics of water, food, and safe shelter to stay alive. A blind woman and an old man with tuberculosis were invited to come into the distribution compound nearby, where the SCC workers had laid out the food in orderly lines. Each person sat on their food and waited patiently for the okay to leave, at which point they'd drag the food back to their tents along with whatever kids they had with them at the time. The culture they live in there in Somalia is run by Islamic theology and dictates every part of their life, including dress codes, food, and even the rules of not being able to ever use birth control. Many women have 6, 7, or 8 children, even though they can barely feed themselves. It was wonderful to take some time and mingle with the kids. They particularly loved it when I turned my video camera viewing screen to face them, allowing them to see themselves as they laughed and made funny faces. This reminded me of my own 3 daughters back home, and I wish to show them this beautiful country someday. The next morning, a feeding center was set up by the Turkish government. The soup consisted of boiling water and animal parts from a recently slaughtered animal. The resulting soup was cooked over these outdoor fires and fed to people until it ran out. In the same compound is an abandoned hole from a hospital well that used to exist there. The SCC has proposed a grant for $84,000 to rebuild the well and create a series of pumps and holding dispensing tanks for the thousands of people surrounding this camp. SCC, which stands for Somalian Citizens Concern, is not tied to any one government and is itself an NGO and thus has the freedom to work with whomever they wish. Our purpose in flying to Africa was to confirm that GAIN and SCC are actually able to ensure safe passage and efficient distribution of food at the camps. We were able to see this process firsthand and are excited to know that our donations are being turned into food and given to the people who really need it. Yet we also understand how with bigger organizations it may be hard to do this, since they're typically hiring outside consultants and contractors to distribute their large quantities of food and water. It was during the feedings at one of these camps that we heard and felt a large explosion and saw a tall mushroom cloud of dirt and smoke rise up behind the building where we were working. When I asked our local contact what he thought it was, he stated that it was a car bomb. He said you could tell by looking at the mushroom cloud because that meant a large amount of ammunition had exploded all at once. It was only later that afternoon when we returned to our hotel we realized the bomb had gone off directly next door to our hotel in the Ministry of Education building. The view from the roof of our hotel confirmed the destruction and deaths of nearly 100 teens who had been at the government complex next door looking at their test scores posted on the front of the building. The kids had all taken a test earlier that day in our hotel and were hoping to have qualified for scholarships to study in Turkey. The bomber was a member of Al-Shabaab, an Islamic militant extremist group that was fighting the government for control over the city of Mogadishu and the entire country of Somalia. They had warned the public to not associate with the government, and the gathering of so many citizens in one place gave them their optimum target. The bomb knocked out part of the hotel and much of the glass, as well as the metal frames and all the glass in my room and several others. We spent the day cleaning up the hotel and repairing the Red Crescent offices located there in the hotel lobby. It's surprising how quickly life returns to normal after even such a tragedy. I think I see in people a desire to have stability and structure, and they came together again within hours of the blast to enjoy a cup of coffee, a meal, a conversation. The news that night talked of the bombing, and I realized for maybe the first time really how easy it is for the world to forget these people, stuck as they are in such chaos and danger and away from our view in another land, dressing totally different than us. Yet time and time again for those 5 days, whenever I got face to face with someone or reached out a hand or swung a kid around, we went from strangers to friends, finding what we had in common rather than what we had as differences in religion or dress or culture. Each time I took a moment to stop, I was welcomed and treated with respect. Each time I drove fast through the city surrounded by armed guards, we were viewed with distrust and curiosity. It was my choice how I entered each day, and I realized that I had also the responsibility to think through each person's story as to how they got to where they are. Not knowing the language is frustrating when I travel anywhere, but giving a candy bar or a pair of shoes is common language, stating that I care. The city of Mogadishu is built on the edge of the Indian Ocean and has a large deep-water port which is able to receive in container ships such as the one bringing in the containers of food. The camps that we visited and will support are all within a few miles of the port, minimizing the risk of any food being hijacked once offloaded. The coast will one day again be a beautiful one, enjoyed by people from around the world, although for now it looks like something from a movie depicting the end of the world more than anything. While Asgir and I were in Somalia, Dieter drove with a local Kenyan friend 8 hours north of Nairobi to the border of Somalia and Kenya. There they distributed food and gave encouragement to the Somalians who had escaped with their lives, but not much else. They were there in hopes of food and water and shelter. While there, they gave out the same manna food packs that we were shipping into Mogadishu and met with the native Maasai tribespeople.
So we brought some treats for the kids, and that's what we're giving away here. Hey, how are you? Saba. 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 Saba.
We later met some of these boys as we gathered together in Nairobi on our last day in Africa. We tried our best to fit in and do as in Rome what Rome does, but it wasn't quite the same watching two middle-aged white boys bouncing around getting their heart rates up. The beauty of the countryside and the animals found in Africa are beautiful. A trip to the local animal reserve was a great way to end our days in Africa, as Kenya in particular is making efforts to generate a healthy ecotourism business. They're aware of the treasure that they have in their midst, and it was a wonderful experience to see this firsthand. GAIN is a U.S.-based 5013C that we're working with to raise and forward money to Somalia. Somalia Citizens Concern, SCC, is a local charity that's distributing the food there locally. This allows them to control the process of who gets the food and also allows them to connect the refugee with the other services they offer, including medical and healthcare training. By empowering SCC there, they are building up their reputation and trusting them to get food to the people who need it most. We also avoid the tension created when Westerners come into the camps and try to understand the culture and its intricate nuances of tribes, clans, and male-female hierarchy. The trip home was filled with the faces of so many kids and men and women, simple, beautiful faces looking out and hoping someone would look back and love them in a practical manner by providing food and water. We were excited to have been there and even more glad to return here to the pleasure and the joy and freedom that we have as Americans. In this freedom, we're glad to reach out and give personally and freely, not waiting for slow-moving governments to act, but rather engaging with the power of one person to act, as I wish someone would if I were living there in that land of famine and civil war. I hope you will respond in a way that brings you peace and joy. There are many ways to get engaged and to have effect. Bono's One campaign is a petition being sent to our government, encouraging them to re-engage again and to provide food and water. GAIN USA is an organization firmly entrenched there and active in providing resolution through delivery of food, water, and hygiene services. They will welcome your connection and involvement in their work there, and most easily you can buy meals for the refugees living in those camps. The cost to deliver the manna packs comes to 10 cents per meal. This includes the food as well as all the freight charges to the camps and the distribution to those, our global neighbors. Please donate now and provide some of those meals for people in the camps, or go to feedingsomalia.org for other ways to get engaged.